With that said, let's get to very quickly the topic of the day. And I don't think on the field there was one super marquee topic that we absolutely had to talk about. But at the same time, there is something sort of on the field, off the field that I do want to quickly discuss because it is the biggest topic of the day, right? We can discuss, we can avoid it, we can pretend like it's not happening. I do want to very quickly talk Jermaine Burton. And I know some of you are tired, Torres. You talk Bama too much. You talk Jermaine Burton on Thursday. You talk Jermaine Burton on Friday. Why are you doing it again? Well, one, it's the biggest story coming out of the weekend. Two, I think Nick Saban completely botched this. And three, nobody else is talking about it. So if nobody else is going to talk about it, I'm not saying I have to do it, but it's the right thing to do because how Nick Saban is handling himself is completely wrong. Okay. And the bottom line is, I think by now, everybody kind of knows the deal with Jermaine Burton. You don't really need me to tell you, but 2 Saturdays ago, Alabama loses to Tennessee in Knoxville. Fans rush the field. It's a chaotic scene. And after the game, we find video probably on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week of a player named Jermaine Burton, a wide receiver that was really projected to be a breakout player for Alabama this year. It has not happened. Breakout player for Alabama, walking by a female student. And I've said it for 3 straight episodes. At best, he pushed this female student. At worst, he shoved her. It was really bad video. And late last week, Nick Saban said, this is something that we are going to handle internally. And I criticized him. I said, I don't think this is something you handle internally with no further context. Are we getting a suspension? Are we getting, is he off the team? And I'm not saying he needs to be kicked off the team. Let's get that like just out in the open. But at the same time, as I told you, if that video pops up under any other circumstance, Jermaine Burton is in fact off the team. If that same video happens at a bar, at a nightclub, on the street, it doesn't matter. And so the bottom line is, listen, I'm not trying to be some white knight hero, fight for the cause. You don't put your hands on women ever under any circumstances. It was never okay. It never will be okay. But in 2022, in the world that we live in, you got to know, you got to be better. And so I was disappointed that Nick Saban really kind of ducked the whole situation. We're going to handle it internally. But what I would also say was to be clear, I was ready to move on. I was not planning on talking about this today. Saturday night comes. Alabama's playing Mississippi State in Tuscaloosa. I drive into work, Fox Sports Radio. I get into work. I sit down. I turn on the game. Jermaine Burton is in the lineup. Jermaine Burton is in the lineup. And I said, what is going on? Now, apparently, and I don't want to put words in other people's mouths because I did not hear it, but I guess Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit largely kind of just avoided it, brushed it off, blah, 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 this and that. But I do give credit to reporters after the game, right? That was my criticism on Friday, was why weren't people pressing him on this more? Well, they did press him after the game. And here is what Nick Saban said about his decision to play Jermaine Burton just a few days after he said he was going to handle the situation internally because his star wide receiver or one of his star wide receivers put his hands on a woman. At best, he pushed her. At worst, he punched her. Okay? Here's what Nick Saban had to say. I don't know how many of you have been in a situation like that. I talked to him. He was scared. I was scared. Some of our other players were scared. I think you learn to respect other people because we have a responsibility to do that regardless of the circumstance we're in. I talked to the guy. We have him in a counseling program. It's not an anger management program, as some people said today. Nobody ever said that. That's not the problem. That's not the issue. He kept going. It's about having the proper respect for people. I didn't think it was necessary to suspend the guy. So if you knew the whole story, maybe you wouldn't either. But I am not going to divulge that. So essentially, here is the crux of what Nick Saban said. He said that his player was scared walking off of the field and that the player does need to learn how to respect other people. And he has been talked to about this. They have him in a counseling program, not anger management, but counseling. But that also, Nick Saban handled it internally, and you have no right to ask questions. But even if you want to ask questions, if you knew the whole story, it might be different. And he's not going to tell the whole story. So really, with Nick Saban's comments, I actually think somehow this makes it look worse, okay? So Nick Saban decides, again, to be clear, just so we have it all on paper here. So just so it's in everybody's head, Jermaine Burton pushes, potentially punches a female student or female fan walking off the field in Neyland Stadium. Jermaine Burton, it is handled internally, which we assume is at least a 1-game suspension. I thought for sure it would just be a 1-game suspension. Alabama goes into the bye. He quietly plays against LSU. He plays instead on Saturday, a week after this incident, and Nick Saban says that he was scared and that if you knew all the details, you would feel that he did nothing wrong, or at the very least that he shouldn't have been suspended. Well, I have two very distinct thoughts on that statement from Nick Saban, besides the fact that I think it's soft and I think it's weak. What I think the truth is with Jermaine Burton and Nick Saban is this. First, I will say that did not look like a player who was scared to me. Now, I can understand you're an Alabama player. You're separated from your teammates. There's 100,000 people, not literally, but metaphorically, descending onto the field. They're all wearing orange. They're all celebrating the biggest win they've had in decades. I understand if you're scared. I understand if you're frustrated. What I can tell you, the one piece of video that we have that something did happen. And by the way, Jermaine Burton did something wrong because Nick Saban called it a disciplinary issue during the week, last Thursday. So Jermaine Burton did do something wrong. The video that I saw, Jermaine Burton did not look scared. Jermaine Burton did not look scared. The girl is trying to walk by him, and he is the one that instigates whatever contact that they had. I'm not calling it a punch, but there was some kind of physical contact between Jermaine Burton and this female student. So if he was scared, he had a weird way of showing it because he didn't swing at another fan. He didn't swing at a male fan. He didn't swing at a fan that was bigger than him. He chose to swing at a female that was smaller than him. Keep in mind, he's a finely tuned athlete, 6'1", 190 pounds. But apparently he was scared of a 5'5" Tennessee fan wearing a sundress. 2, and this is the part that really gets to me. When Nick Saban at the end says, I didn't think it was necessary to suspend the guy. So if you knew the whole story, maybe you wouldn't either, but I am not going to divulge that. Well, here's the bottom line. Here is what I'm going to tell you, Nick Saban. I'm just going to tell you man to man. You're right. You don't have to divulge the whole story. You don't have to share what happened. But I will tell you a couple things. One, the female did not press charges, which means that unless I'm missing something, this isn't like I can't, the lawyers are telling me not to. This is you choosing not to. And you're right. We don't have all the facts. Obviously, if you ask an Alabama fan, they're going to say that she said something to him, or she called him a name, or she shoved him, or she pushed him, or there's more video that we haven't seen. We only have video of what we have video of, and what we have is him instigating the contact. And so to me, when Nick Saban says there's more to it, but I'm not going to tell you, you don't owe me anything, because that's Alabama. Oh, Torres, what? He doesn't owe you anything. No, he doesn't. But him not telling us what he knows, what does that make it seem like? Here's the truth. It makes it seem like Nick Saban is okay with his star players physically putting their hands on a woman. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. He doesn't owe me anything. You're absolutely right, Alabama fans who are telling that. He owes me nothing. But without context, without understanding, without having any idea of what happened, you know what that video looks like? That video looks like a coach that put winning on Saturday against Mississippi State ahead of the health and safety of that young woman that got pushed, that got shoved, that got slapped, that got punched, whatever it was. And I don't know what it was. The video was grainy, but I know that he instigated the contact. And so, no, Nick Saban owes me nothing. He doesn't have to tell me what happened. He doesn't have to divulge details. But without details, we make assumptions. And the assumption that we are all making right now, except for Alabama fans, is that Nick Saban cares more about winning than the safety of that woman. You can agree, you can disagree. But to everybody other than Alabama fans, that's sure what it looks like to me. It sure looks like to me, he doesn't care about her. He doesn't care about her safety. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe she did say something. Maybe there is some audio somewhere that exists that we haven't had access to. Maybe Jermaine Burton is telling the truth and she's just looking for attention. I don't think that's what happened, but maybe. But without context, it looks like a coach that is okay with a male putting hands on a female. It's a bad look, Coach Saban. It's a bad look. I'll tell you, I'm curious over the next couple of days if this continues to pick up steam. The comments made it look worse. I don't want to say I'd be surprised if he played against LSU, but I think that this pressure is not going to go away publicly.